On the way to visit Elmina Castle, we visited the slave market and riverside. I find this to be a very meaningful site, so I want to make this video available, especially for those of you who might not have the chance to visit yourself. Our guide's African English might have a bit of an accent. I will put up the transcript in the comment below.
During that particular trip, the captives that were brought all the way from the northern section passed through this community, had their very last bath at the river down here. At the riverside, 3 different activities happened there. The last bath, meaning this is where they had their very last bath on the motherland before they were taken to the castles for onward transportation to the new world. At the riverside, the second activity that happened there was the first auction. And then the third one was the first branding. So when we get to the riverside, we'll be able to talk more from that section. This park is an ancestral graveyard plus the market we have at the riverside. So long before the arrival of the Europeans, our ancestors were living in various communities doing their day-to-day activities. But because they were always with the intention of expanding, so they were moving from one place to the other in search of resources, in search of good land. But whilst they were moving, they get always meeting new people or other people in the various places they were getting to. Those who are already existing, they try to protect what they have. So there is that level of resistance. There is that level of fight. It brings in that war between the people who were originally staying there and those who were coming in to take access of their properties or resources they had there. After the wars are done, what happens is the new group which is able to capture the other smaller one takes possession of the people and then the resources. They have them among themselves. They were not segregated, they were not discriminated against. They all stayed in the community, lived life as just the locals were living. They gave them the opportunity to own properties, to be able to have fun, to marry, to give birth, and just to live like the way they were living in their original homes. The only difference in this sense is that they were under the control of those who won over them in a way. So those who were blacksmiths in their old places come here to continue with the activity. Those who were herbalists there comes here, join the herbalists here, and then continue with that. They add the youths or the young energetic men to their army so that they get a stronger army for them to go and fight somewhere else to expand. So they were always on the move looking for new resources or new lands to occupy until the arrival of the Europeans. The first group of Europeans who came to the shores of Ghana here were the Portuguese. They got to a community called Elmina by 1471. When they got there, they had this understanding with the chiefs that they needed a place to put up their structure, to stay there and trade, because that was the actual reason why they were here. When they came in first, they tried passing through the northern sections, the North Africa area, but that time there was already the presence of the Arabs. So Arabs have dominated that area, came in with their trade, which was the Trans-Saharan trade, and then made presence of their religion, which was the Islamic religion. So they were looking for a different route. That made them to use our coast over here, which is the Gulf of Guinea. So when they got to Elmina, they stayed, they built their castle over there. They were in by 1471. 11 years later, which was 1482, the Elmina castle was built. They stayed there and traded with our ancestors. What were some of the things they were trading in? They were trading in gold, ivory, pepper, and other spices. But whilst they were here, they kept on meeting strong, energetic young men and women which were of black race. Around the 15th century, they got possession of the New World, which was the Americas and then the Caribbean, and they wanted manpower over there. because the Red Indians they met over there, who they took as captives, were dying of diseases such as chickenpox. So the population kept reducing, and they wanted extra hands on the plantations because they were having plantations over there. Sugarcane plantation, tobacco plantation, cotton plantation. So they were looking for manpower to augment what the Indians were supposed to help them in doing. So when they came back here, they had a discussion with our ancestors that you have people you got out of war, you have them among you, you are treating them like the way you treat your locals. Don't you think you are exposing yourself to harm? Because a day will come where they will know all your secrets and they will fight against you. Why not give us those people so that we take them to the New World to work on our plantations? Then we give you something in return. Our ancestors thought it was a wise deal because they also didn't want to take chances by keeping their enemies among them. So they agreed in exchanging the victims of war for certain commodities. What were some of the commodities they were getting in return? So when they give the captives, they got items like gunpowder, mirror, sugar, beads. These were some of the items they were getting in return. But the gun and the gunpowder was very important to our ancestors because remember I told you they were always on the move and were expanding. So they used the gun and gunpowder for their protection and also to expand their territory. That trade went on for over a century with the Portuguese. Whilst the trade was going on, other European countries saw the gains that the Portuguese were getting out of the trade. So they also came in and wanted share of that particular trade. Where did they come from? Some of them came from the Dutch were here, the Danes were here, the Swedes were here, the Germans passed through, and then the French passed through. The very last group who were with us till we got our independence were the British. So they have been with us for a very long time to also take part in this particular trade. The trade was abolished in 1808, but that is on paper. In reality, it went beyond that because there are documented evidence of people who were even going around kidnapping people long after it was cancelled on paper. But you and I who attest to the fact that not all the people that were gotten through the captives of war. There were some that were captured or kidnapped. So the Europeans had agents or missionaries around the blacks who they gave weapons to go into the interior and steal people for them. I always say they steal. But some want us to say they were kidnapping, but it's still the same thing. Taking something away from the owner without the owner's permission is still stealing. So they were kidnapping people, bring them all the way from wherever they were kidnapped to this particular place. So when they get to the riverside we have here, that is where they had their very last bath. They were fed only once a day, all the way from countries such as Chad, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, northern Ghana, through the Middle Belt, all the way to this community. They were not walking with their footwears like we have nicely here. They were walking barefooted and they were chained. So there were chains and shackles on their foot, all the way from where they were coming from to this particular community. They had metal balls that were attached to the chains to prevent them from running away. So the metal balls were keeping the chains grounded on the individual so that their journey from that wherever they were picked from to this community would be smooth. Those who tried resisting along the route were shot at, so they killed some of them to put fear in the rest of the group. When they are to cross rivers, because these are people who were brought from the hinterlands who don't know how to swim, there are instances where some get drowned in the rivers and die. They disentangle them and drop them wherever they die. Whilst on the journey, there are instances they get to some of the thick forests, because all of our sections here were forest zones at the time, but because of human activities, that's why most of these forests are gone. But our version here, from the junction to the riverside, we try maintaining it as a forest to be able to give experience of how our ancestors walk through this particular place. When they get to places like that where there are wild animals, they take some of the people who are the captives who are giving them problem, the ones who are being stubborn among the rest of the group. They take them, chain them to a tree, lash the back of the individual. The blood that comes out, the wild animals in the forest are able to sense the blood, come closer and feed on that individual. That gives the rest of the group the opportunity to use the different routes to escape from the wild animals. This particular park was built in the year 1998. It was built to give that connection between we in the homeland and then our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Once the captives got to this place to have their last bath, this is the far place where the Europeans or the raiders, the merchants were able to meet the raiders. So the raiders are people, the blacks that were sent into the interior to capture people for the trade. So the merchants who come from the castles meet them here, they do their exchanges, and then the raiders go back to continue with their activity. The merchants go to the castle to also continue with their activity. The journey takes so many months to get here because these are people who were walking barefooted in chains and shackles. There are instances they walk as long as 6 months, 5 months, 4 months to get to this place. Those times there was no phone for them to be communicating. So when they even get here, there are instances they stay here for about a month before the merchants come to meet them. Through the gate of no return, they are taken into the new world. So when this park was built, 2 mortal remains were brought back to this community to be buried, to give that connection between the homeland and our brothers and sisters from the diaspora. If you look at our back this way, the first one on our left, the one on our left is a lady called Lady Crystal. So she starved herself till death. She decided not to eat to show her displeasure against the tree. So they used chisel and hammer to take off front of her front teeth, put a funnel in there, put food through it. But because she was bent on not taking any food to show her displeasure, when they are gone, she puts the hand into the mouth and threw out whatever food they placed in there. She continued in that way for a very long time and finally passed on. But because she was a black person, she wasn't given any befitting burial. So in the year 1998, her mortal remains, plus the one in the middle, who is a military man. So he's a young black African taken to the Americas, went to the US Army all the way to a commander level. But because of his origin, because of his color, he wasn't given any form of befitting burial. So in the year 1998, these 2 individuals' mortal remains were brought to this community to be given a befitting burial. That was when the site was officially opened to the public to be able to come in here, get piece and piece of the story, and then be able to go to the riverside and have a look at the river. The year 2019 was declared as Year of Return. So it was a year that was declared from January to December to give opportunity to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to come back to their root and connect with their kinsmen. So the Prime Minister of Barbados and her team did an excavation there in a slave cemetery. The collection of mortal remains they got were placed in a casket, flown all the way from Barbados to this particular community. That is the 3rd grave we have here. So that one is a collection of bones, but not a bone of a single individual. This place is a sacred place. It's a place of paying homage to our ancestors. So the gate, once we're entering, the gate is made short with the sense that once we get there, we do a bit of bending. Unconsciously, we are paying homage to our ancestors who were buried in this particular graveyard. Time after time, we allow our brothers and sisters from the diaspora to bring the ashes of their relatives. They bring it to the cemetery here, and they are given the opportunity to spread it around the graves to show that finally their loved ones are back to their roots. if there is any question you want to ask from this section, you are free to ask, and then I continue with it. Right. It's called mimosa. Mimosa pudica. When you touch it, you observe something. What did you see? What did you see?
It withdraws.
Oh.
So when you touch it, it closes.
Yeah.
Our ancestors were using this plant also to be able to determine the presence of invaders. They were not having CCTV like we have now. So this was some of the plants they were using for that activity. They use it to detect when someone passes through a place. So if they are here and they see that all of these things are closed, meaning someone was here some few minutes ago, because they don't know if the person is a friend or an enemy, so they try avoiding using that particular route so that they don't expose themselves to their enemy.
And are the raiders mostly local people, or are
Yes,
they the
so-
white people?
So there were some of the criminally minded locals that were weaponized by the Europeans.
Oh,
So the Europeans didn't go so much into the deep, but they came to meet the raiders at the
here.
riverside,
Okay.
and then they do their exchanges. So the raiders will bring the individuals or the captives, and then the merchants will bring the goods I mentioned previously. So they were doing barter trade. They were not using physical cash, but they were exchanging goods for goods.
So do the raiders become rich, like
Yes,
their
so
generations?
the items they were getting from the merchants
Mm.
were things that were needed by the locals too. So when they take it there, they
do
became
the
rich. That
trading.
was what encouraged more people into the trade. That was even why more people also went into the raiding, because they saw the benefits that the raiders
Yeah.
were getting. Same as some of the European countries also came in, because they saw the benefits the first traders who traded with our ancestors were getting. That encouraged more of the European countries to also come here and participate in that particular trade.
So did the raiders ever get punished?
So they've
In the
been
more-
like allies of the Europeans, but within they themselves, within the blacks communities, they were not seeing them as good people. They were seeing them as enemies of the area.
local.
Yes. So they saw them as enemies, because these are people who were capturing their own kinsmen and going to give out to someone. So these are not people they would be loved by their kinsmen back at their places.
Okay.
Year 2007, to give opportunity to our brothers and sisters from the diaspora, the blacks, to come back home, write their name there to show that they've come back to their root. So it's like a way of reconnection between the blacks from the diaspora and then their motherland. They get the opportunity to write their names there to show that finally they are back to their root. But for now, the space is up. So usually the management is now planning on something unique to put out, so that next time they come around, they get the opportunity to write their names on the wall to show that they are finally back to their roots. Doing the trade. So they were having this on the legs of the individuals. So remember I told you they were not walking freely like you and I will be doing now to the riverside. But they were having chains of this nature on their legs.
And then are they chained to other people?
Yes, so they were
Or
chained
after?
to each other. So they were in a row and then they were chained in that order. With this kind of metal balls attached to the chains to keep them grounded. So this particular chain and bolt were found in the river where we are going now. So a group came from the United States of America, and whilst they were there, they were able to get access to this from the river, and then they donated it to the site for us to have that experience of the kind of chains that were used at the time.
Okay.
So take this route, and then we use the original.
哇，这个好重啊！我觉得这个至少得有5公斤吧。5 kilo.
Oh, it's too low.
Along the way where they will stay and then relax. So the slave market at Salaga was the largest of all the slave camps in West Africa at the time. Where we are going now, Assin Manso slave market was the busiest among all of the slave markets. This particular place was busy because of its closeness to the castle, to the merchant, and then they exchange the goods to take our ancestors. Just imagine walking through a forest like this, or a forest which is even thicker than this particular one, with wild animals in it. You are in chains and shackles. If an animal is climbing, how are they able to remove or to kill that animal? These are individuals who were in chains and shackles. So just imagine how they were doing it. They didn't take only men, they took men, women, and even children. So sometimes I get people ask me, why were they taking children? Because they believe the children are the future. So when they have the children with them, these children will grow up and in future become the workforce that they needed. Women were added with the sense that when they are able to get to the new world, they will give birth and then their children will keep the trade going. So those were the reasons why they have children and women among. This is called the storeroom. It was built here to give a connection between we, the people of Assin Manso, and then the activity that happened during the trade. To our visitors to the site, to be able to have an idea how our chieftaincy system works. So in Assin Manso here, we do matrilineal. Individual become a chief because the mother's side are the royals. So when a chief passes on, they choose one of his nephews to become the next chief, not the son. So we do matrilineal, but places like North and then Volta region, they do patrilineal. So you become a chief or you inherit from your dad's side. But we here, we do inheritance from mother's side. As far as 1050, there was already a community called Assin Manso. So long before the Europeans came, we had a community here with chiefs who were ruling. So these are some of the chiefs that have ruled this particular community all the way from 1050 to 1968. The ones here are said to be chiefs with a blackened stool. What does it mean? These were chiefs that were chosen, coronated, ruled, died, and were buried as chiefs. So we say they are chiefs with a blackened stool. But chiefs without a blackened stool are chiefs who were selected, coronated, ruled, but died, but were suspended along the way or destooled along the way. So when you look at our back this way, that's the name of the chiefs who were not having the blackened stool. This particular community is a paramountcy. What does it mean? Meaning we have several communities with their chiefs who pay allegiance to the paramount chief of this particular town. During the trade, there was this agreement between the chiefs and then the raiders and their merchants that this is the last place you can get to meet your raiders, get your people, and go back. Do you know why the chiefs were doing that? To prevent the raiders from coming into the community to kidnap their kinsmen. That was their also way of protecting their kinsmen against the raiders. The very last chief we had here was the site was built. So long before our independence, there was already a river here where the captives were having their last bath. But it was during his reign that he went to the Americas and then the Caribbean with government delegations to consolidate that joint distance between Ghana and then those particular countries. It was then that this particular site was built. He has done so much for the community, and it's one of the prepared chiefs that we revered so much. He ruled for over 40 years before he was called to glory. After his demise, this is the current chief we have. So this one ruled from 68 to 2016, and then after he died in 2022, we had this new chief. He is still relatively young, very strong, and very handsome. We always pray for him to stay long and be with us, bring us more development as a community and as a paramountcy. No need anybody doing anything to suspend him or her. You understand me?
Yeah.
But if along the way they start seeing changes in the person's character, either because of the person becomes power drunk or the person is becoming corrupt or something, then the question starts from that angle, because you are the leader. We want to see leadership qualities in you. So if we don't see it in you, how are your kinsmen, your people, going to do the same thing?
So
that
then
is what calls for the distillment.
the distill, okay,
Yes.
black
But there are
school.
few scenarios for the distillment.
Oh.
Most of them are able to start and then finish, like just like the one I showed you for
Yep.
about 40 years.
And when you choose the chief, it doesn't have to be the older son.
No,
Or
it depends on the character. Usually it should be
The
the
oldest.
eldest, but there are instances where if they don't see all of these characters in the early one, they can decide to choose on the second or the third,
Okay.
depending on the family and then
Yeah.
the talks that went on
okay.
among them. The busiest slave market in West Africa. This side we see were part of the market. All the bamboos you see over there. So there were no houses here. When the captives are brought, they chain them to the bamboos.
Oh, okay.
They chain them to the bamboos. They stay here as long as they will be here till the merchants come from the castle to come and then trade. Those who died here were thrown into the bamboo plantation. So there are a lot of people who were dumped in there. There are some that died around here and they were also thrown into the river. I told you 3 unique activities happen in this market. Let's get closer to this water so that we talk about this. 2 rivers. We have Nana Emisan, the one flowing. It's called Nana Emisan. The locals call it Ochi. It always flows like this. At the beginning of last week, it wasn't like this. So it rained. There are several rains that fell up. So they were able to wash themselves down this way. That's why we see it up like this. If it were to be the normal time, there are rocks in there where people go there to take pictures. Some sit there to do their meditation. But because of the rain, we are now entering into the raining season proper. So that is why it has risen up. Yesterday, it came all the way to this place and then went to that section. But now it has gone down again. The one we see here, the very calm one we see here, it's always calm like that. That is the slave river. That is where our ancestors were having their very last bath on the motherland. So when they bring them to this place, they let them bath here, but they are still in chains and shackles. They use the back of the bamboo. It's something very itchy. If you use something on your body, you see that it's very itchy. But that's what they use in washing themselves. After they are done, they bring them to the open space here to dry them up. They apply shea butter on their body to freshen them. The bath they had is not because they love them or anything, but because of the distance they've covered. The sweat, the dirt on them are to be cleaned so that they look fresh when they get to the market for them to get a better price. They feed them from here. So remember I told you they will feed them only once in a day. But when they get here, they feed them for them to get a bit of their lost weight back so that they'll be able to get a good price. After they apply the shea butter on their body, they have a tool they use in opening their mouth. Count the number of teeth in their mouth to give them idea how old the individual is. Based on the ages, they line them up for the first auction. What is the first auction about? That is where the proper trading activity happens from. So from here, we'll move closer so that we see what happens there. Young. So when they take off the hair and then the beard, the captive looks young. Because they wanted energetic and well-built individuals, when they line them up from the market here, the merchants are able to choose the strong ones who they will be taken to the castles through the gate of no return into the Americas and then the Caribbean for them to go and work on the plantations. When they are done with the choosing or the buying from this section, they exchange good for good. They give the raiders the items they've decided on, and then the raiders give them the captives. The raiders go back to their place. The merchants also go back to the castles. Those who are very weak, or the ones who are rejected, who were not bought, were left in this community. They leave them here. So when the raiders are gone back to continue with their activity and the merchants are gone back, members from the Assin Manso community come to this park come to take the ones that are weak but have signs of surviving. They take them to the town, look after them. When they heal and become healthy, they become members of the family who came to pick them. Those who die here are thrown into the bamboo plantation. After the selection is done from here, the next thing that happens is the first branding. What is the first branding about? That is when they put identification on the various individuals. These are people who were brought from different places, speaking different languages. But when they get here, one thing becomes a connecting point between each and every one of them. That is the mark they put on them. So let's get closer to this place and then we'll be able to talk about that mark. Spend the number of people they want. The next thing they do is to put marks on the individual to serve as form of identification. So this is what happens. They put metal into fire. When the metal is red hot, they use that metal in making mark on the individual to show which owner owns which captives. From here, because they exchange goods for goods, they become like properties of whichever merchants bought them. They let them squat this way, and then either at the back, on the part of the leg, or the hands, depending on which merchant bought which individual. They use that hot metal to create signs on the individual. So when we look up there, you see that sign that is being created there. It gives the idea of which merchant owns which particular captive. They put the chains and shackles on them, and then they continue the journey from here to the castles. They stay at the castles until they get the full consignment they want. They pack them into the ships and then take them to the New World. There are gates at the castles called Gate of No Return. But during the 1990s, when those two people were being brought here, they passed through the same castle. That was when the name was changed from Gate of No Return to Gate of Return, to tell our brothers and sisters in the diaspora that home is calling, home is ready, and you are free to come back any day, anytime. In the year 2019, that was declared as Year of Return. We had so many of our brothers and sisters from diaspora who came back to their roots to reconnect and make new associations from here. It was also during that time that we changed from last bath to the first bath of return. So whilst our ancestors were going, they went and had their very last bath from here. But when our brothers and sisters from diaspora are coming, we let them pass through the first bath of return to give them the opportunity of seeing the water and touching it. But it is very up right now, so we'll just stand here, have a look at it, and then we'll go back to the park to finish with our experience. That bamboo has crossed the water. Some went as far as that place to sit on rocks. We have a lot of rocks in the water here, all the way up. This same river is what is coming from that side. When you go ahead, some pass here, some pass. So this section becomes like an island. But the one we saw here is where the captives were backing in. So on a normal time, this one flows, but it's very calm from the top. So it flows under, and then this one comes together, and then they move together. This water moves all the way through Mankesin to go and then join the sea. When our brothers and sisters from the diaspora are in, they're able to go into the water, give thanks to the ancestors for their resilience, because these were people who worked so many months to get here and even through this place to the New World. So we give them the opportunity to go in there, have a feel of the river, and those who want to connect through meditation or prayers are given that opportunity. If there is any question, you are free to ask. If you want to take anything to Ghana, Togo, Benin, they have forts and castles there. But Ghana played a critical role because here they had a lot of those forts and castles here. So they built over 40 forts and castles. And about 32 of them are UNESCO heritage sites that tourists come each year to visit and be able to learn the history. That was also why, because the infrastructure was already there, during the trade, they were using those infrastructure for the storage. So most of these people were captured from different places, but came through this particular country because we already had those
Oh, you mean the
resources
castle
there,
and
the
for the
forts,
harbor for the
for the
boat.
trade.
come together.
So they were bringing some from different countries. So remember, I even told you some were brought from Chad, Mali,
Yeah.
Niger, Burkina Faso, all the way to this place.
But they
They say,
come.
eh? Oh,
So those also come via inland from the
yes,
land.
so they bring them from the
the
inland
land.
because they don't have the forts there.
There, yeah, okay.
So they were close to the
This is
Gulf
a
of
sea.
Guinea
This is a sea.
sea area.
Yeah,
so
sea area,
they use the
seaport.
sea to transport them to
Okay.
the new world.
Understand?
People who have gone through so much atrocities to get to where they are now. So when you miss them, the little I will beg from you is to give them love. Let them feel belonged. Let them have that level of happiness so that it's able to cleanse some of the atrocities that their parents or their ancestors went through. Thank you once again for coming. And I pray that our ancestors will guide you to your destinations. Make everything that you do there prosper for you. For coming back to this place to see what our ancestors went through. Invite your brothers and sisters to also come, be able to experience what our ancestors have experienced. Thank you once again. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for